Well, with so many changes during this COVID-19 shutdown, a lot of industry sectors have been affected. Pretty much everything has been affected. And so too, everything with regards to mortgages and applications and qualifications. If you have a mortgage upcoming, an application or a renewal, perhaps a refinancing, consolidating debt, there's some very important changes that you need to be aware of. My name is Jerry Chopic. I'm with Right at Home Realty, Canada's largest independent brokerage. And for today's interview, I'm delighted to have a well-respected mortgage specialist with us to answer some key questions that I've been fielding over the last couple of weeks while we've been in this shutdown scenario. Joe Ferraro is a mortgage agent with Mortgage Intelligence, focusing on commercial and residential lending throughout the GTA and surrounding areas. And that includes first-time buyers, purchasers of homes and condos, as well as those consolidating debt, refinancing, or renewing their mortgages. Now, it also just so happens that I've known Joe for, wow, about 15 years now, and we actually go back to our mixed martial arts days in 2004, 2005. So that was a quick 15 years. You may also know Joe as Rogers Sportsnet's Canada's top MMA commentator, Showdown Joe. What I've always liked about Joe is his down-to-earth and sincere approach to dealing with his clients. Always informative, always up-to-date, and always a pleasure. And Joe, welcome, and it's great to have you online with us today.
Jerry, it's always a pleasure to be with you anywhere, anytime around this globe. We've had some amazing times over the years and some new chapters now that we're both experiencing, and I absolutely love every minute of it. So I hope you're doing well and your family's doing well during this crazy pandemic, sir.
Well, thank you. Yes, and it's been a while since you and I have actually connected face-to-face. We've spoken a few times, but I haven't actually seen you in a while. It's been a while there, and for those watching the video today, you can tell it's also been a while since either Joe or I have seen a barber. So.
Very true.
Joe, these are really unprecedented times. It's really just shaken the planet, really. And with everything that's happened in this shutdown of non-essential businesses and such, lending and the real estate sector have been deemed essential, and we carry on there, but not without significant changes. I'm wondering, how have you seen the changes in your side of the business, from the lending and the mortgaging process? How have things been affected during this shutdown?
Previously to the state of emergency being announced, putting together an application, whether it's a pre-approval or just a purchase in general, was a more simple step process. What's happened now is we've taken a segment of that application and we've had to bring it forward. And what I mean by that is income documentation. Before the actual pandemic took place, I would get a phone call from a first-time home buyer or somebody wanting to sell and buy, or just applying for a mortgage in general. I would ask them a few questions, give them a quick verbal pre-approval as to where they currently are at or what we can do. To actually underwrite it, I would need the income documents. And the income documents are the basic things like your two most recent pay stubs, a letter of employment, your past 2 years notice of assessments, and your past 2 years T4s. That's if you're a regular salaried client. And
Right.
I would gather that information after I would submit the application, because I know that if they've got it, we're good to go. Now with the lenders, before they even think of issuing a commitment, they want all of those documents up front. They want to review the income documentation, all 4 items, if you're a salaried employee, right off the top. They want to make sure that you're still employed, that you're not in a situation or you're in a position where you could technically be laid off or lose your job. And they want to make sure that everything, it's a lot of it has to do, Jerry, with anti-money laundering. But they want to make sure that you are employed, and they can verify that income in 4 different ways. They all have to match in
Right.
certain ways. You can't say that your notice of assessments, Jerry, or you make 35,000, or sorry, you tell me you make 75,000 a year, but your notice of assessments for the past 2 years say 35,000, but your most recent pay stub shows that you're making 25,000. Red flags everywhere. So the lenders want to see that beforehand, and then they will issue you the commitment with the other items that need to be satisfied, the conditions like your purchase and sale agreement from both ends, any waivers and amendments and stuff like that. So that's a little bit different than what it was before. And the other thing is appraisals, Jerry. I'm not too sure what's happening with some of the homes that you're buying and selling for your clients. Appraisals are in general coming in lower. I had a recent one this week that we're closing where the purchasers, the buyers, bought the property for $1,040,000, so 1.04, and then the appraiser came in at 960 or 900, and 70,000. So that was a lot of money for the clients to come up with to close the deal. So that's what we're experiencing, at least the last 2 weeks now.
It was a little bit longer for me, but yes, we had exactly that. And it's so funny you should say that because within $5,000, it was the same scenario. I sold a home to a couple. They were both doctors, and it was their first home in just over $1 million. And that's exactly what happened. And they had to come up with an extra $60,000, which fortunately they had in order to actually close the deal. So really what you're saying is that the process at the end of the day is still the same. One still has to verify all their income and such, but it's just being asked for on the front end. So that's we're going to come up to that in a moment too, because I'm going to ask you later, whether, if I forget, you can remind me, but is this something you think is going to be permanent? So that's another question. So that's good info there. Anything else that you think has changed dramatically in the process? I think on the appraisal side of things too, of course, appraisers aren't actually walking into homes any longer at the moment. So do you see that as a change? Is it taking longer, or are they doing things differently?
I think the appraisers are doing things differently, but it's different per company, per appraiser on how they're doing it. I mean, there was one situation where we had the option of doing a drive-by appraisal, which usually comes in much lower than what the value of the home is, because the appraiser can't go inside and take a look at the small things like the walls or the wiring or anything of that nature, ventilation. And we had the option of actually paying for the appraiser to go into the property because the property was vacant. The sellers had already moved out. The buyers were just getting ready to finalize the deal. So that was something different. But the problem was this appraiser, although we paid for it, Jerry, didn't want to go. Didn't want to go because there was a mandate that stated that they don't have to go because of COVID-19, completely and understandable. But the house was vacant. It had been vacant for over a week. So we were hoping he would go out there. And this was that appraisal that came in much lower than we had anticipated.
So from a purchaser's perspective, for example, big area, what this really means, if I'm hearing it correctly, is that where we typically would say, well, I need 4 or 5 days as a condition to secure my financing. Now it may be more what we're finding. It may be more like 2 weeks because
depending on the lender, yes.
Depending on the lender and depending upon what's happening, and such things as, well, I do have a good job and I do have regular pay, but I have been laid off. All of a sudden that changes everything. And some lenders may say, well, that's fine. You've been there for 10 years. We know everything's great. Another lender might say, well, you know what? I'm nervous about that. We're not going to extend funds. So then someone like you has to come in and more time is required to go out and find another lender. All right. So that's important. And I think you deal with both A level and B level lenders, if I'm correct. Yeah. So with that, and the social distancing, we touched briefly on the appraisers here, but with the social distancing and the shelter-in-place regulations, how are you dealing with this whole scenario of no longer meeting, clients face to face? And what I'm asking is, what should applicants, your clients, lenders' clients, what should they be aware of because that scenario has changed? I think
it's a three-part answer to that question. Yeah, I loathe it, Jerry. I absolutely despise it. You've known me long enough. I need to see you. I need to shake your hand. I need to say hi. I need to have a coffee with you. I need to have, let's grab a lunch. I need to meet my client. So part of my job is not only KYC, know your client. I have to verify their identity. I've got to make sure they are a real human being. Now, when they send me the picture of their driver's license, the front picture of their driver's license, okay, yeah, I believe it's you, but I still need to see you. I need to verify it's you.
Well, for FinTrack, that's a requirement too, right?
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So and then I would go and I'd meet the client, and we'd have the paperwork ready to go, and I would verify that that's the client. Now I need a FaceTime call or a Zoom call or something, and the ID is on the right side of my screen, they're on the left side of my screen. Now I know it's the real person. But there's
Right.
a personal aspect that I firmly believe as human beings, that when we meet somebody, it adds to the relationship. It adds a trust factor. It adds truth to everything. So I missed that part.
Yesterday, Premier Ford announced that, well, here's a template for restarting the province. Now, it was a template and not a timeline, so there's really no start date for it. But at least, you know, there's some conversation underway that, hey, we may have an opportunity to see this coming to an end and trying to get back to normal, whatever normal is. And or whatever normal will be, I guess, is the thing. And that's my question here. You know, I suspect that in many sectors, business sectors, and throughout the economy overall, things will never be the same. I think certain changes will have taken place that, for various reasons, will remain the same. A good example we touched on a moment ago was this scenario about, well, you know, working from home, and all of these literally hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of jobs, which there's no way they could be done at home. They had to be done at the office. Well, they're actually being done at home. You know, so how might that actually change things overall? That's a topic really for another discussion. But I think that there will be changes here. I just don't know exactly what they are that will be permanent. What do you see, given the experience you've had so far in the last 5-6 weeks, and the changes being made? How do you think things will change permanently with regards to the whole mortgaging application, mortgage landscape process?
Well, from a mortgage landscape scenario, what I'm really thinking about, and I've had a few conversations with some friends of mine, in the realtor side, commercial side, it's more of the commercial, because from a commercial lending perspective or just a commercial purchases perspective, brick and mortar right now is a big question mark post-pandemic, because how many businesses really need to have a brick and mortar location now that it's proven you can technically do the work from home, or a lot of your staff can do the work from home. So if you have a situation where a lender, as an example, a lender has 150 people on staff, and all 150 people would go into this big building, the head office, and work from there. But now for the past 6-7 weeks, they've all been working from home.
Yeah.
Do you really need that building now? What's going to happen with that building? Do you really need to spend that money on a mortgage and or financing in general on that building? Now, there are other buildings that do require services, but you can look at some other ones and say, does it really need to happen? For example, off the top of my head, hair salon, right? Yeah. People love going to the hair salon. You and I don't, clearly, but people love going to the hair salon, but people can open up their businesses from home. Yeah. Right? Figure out a way to do it at home, right? So retail, I wonder what's going to really happen with retail now that so many people are able to buy their products online. Do you really have to go to the mall?
Right? Well, you're absolutely right. I was talking about this. It's interesting you bring it up. I was talking about this literally over dinner yesterday with my son, Ryan, by the way, who says hello. And we were talking about this over dinner yesterday, and that was exactly what I said, that, hey, a lot of these companies might be saying, you know what, our lease is up in 2 years. Do we really need 150,000 square feet? Like, could we really be getting away with maybe 25,000 square feet and having everyone work from home? And that would be significant, potentially, profit towards their bottom line. So that's another thing.
The question I really have for someone like yourself is, we need to look at millennials as an example, because me personally, and I'm sure yourself, I don't know, I actually shouldn't speak for you. I apologize for that. I would never buy a house unless I can get in there. I need to get in there and I need to see it. People are doing transactions without even walking into the home. They're seeing it virtually and they're signing, sealing, and delivering. And I'm like, that's brave, right? And knock on wood, you might have just scored the most beautiful house with a nice virtual tour done by your realtor, but I'm old school. Maybe it's my age. And my wife is the same way. I need to walk in there. I need to open that door and like, yes, this is the house I want to live in. I want to see a bit more. Showing me a video, I'm like, you're talking to a guy who's in video and broadcasting for 20 to 25 years. I can make it look good, right? So it's one of those things where we've got to make sure that it is what it is. But, millennials are like, I'll buy that house in a heartbeat. how they work,
Well, I think,
right?
yeah, I think there is a change there, and it's a cultural thing in some ways, and I agree with you. Typically, that's what I would want to do. But there could be reasons also why that's not going to happen. For example, I can't go and see the home, but I do have to move. I've been transferred. Kids have already booked into the new school. We have to leave. I sold uh, already.
And we
I,
get
I need a place to go to, and this is another thing, and maybe topic for another discussion. We can get back together, and that is the chain, what I'll call the chain. Uh, he sold, and then he bought, and they sold, and there's a lot of people involved on any given day in a single transaction, because
oh
there are
yeah.
many single transactions, and when one of those pieces falls out of the puzzle, what does that mean, and how do we deal with that? Joe, it's always a pleasure, and I really appreciate your time today, and sharing your market knowledge with us. If anyone has any questions for you with regards to mortgaging or refinancing, or just what's happening in the market there, what's the best way to get in touch with you, Joe?
Phone, email always works best. My email is joe@joeferraro.ca. The website is joeferraro.ca. My phone number is 416-616-5390. And social media has been huge for me, Jerry. I mean, my Instagram, Joe A. Ferraro, and all the other ones with my Facebook and my Twitter, they've been fantastic. These people nowadays, people want to direct message you. They want to DM you. That's
Sure.
a perfect avenue. If you feel comfortable doing that, you happen to run across one of my videos or posts on Instagram, you want to DM me, whatever's easy for you.
Great. Well, this has been great. I really appreciate the input. It's been good information. And I want to thank everyone who's watched the video today. And of course, if you have, I hope it's been of value. And if you have any other questions, feel free to drop the comments below, or likewise, drop me a direct message, and we'll take care of it from there. So in the interim, for everyone out there during these challenging times, just be well and stay safe.